Would you rather be married to a fool, or would you rather speak to a prince? I believe you can be that woman who draws out the noble purposes of the men in her life, who draws out the noble purposes of the friends in her life. I want to talk to you about being that woman who knows what she has, being that woman who walks in wisdom. And I can't think of a better woman to pull from than Abigail. I'm going to unpack a little bit of the story, some things you might not have seen before, to give you a little bit of context of David's mood and what was going on. First of all, we find out in 1 Samuel 24 that David has just proven his innocence to Saul. He has just had a chance to kill Saul, and he doesn't kill him. And Saul's going, you know what? You're more noble than me. You're more godly. God's hand is on your life to rule. I'm sorry. Please don't kill all of my relatives. And David's like, honorably discharges them, says, I won't. And then at the beginning of chapter 25, we find out that Samuel has died. Now, Samuel was the prophet that had anointed David as king. So now we've got Saul that has said, okay, one day you're going to be king. Then we've got Samuel that has died. And we find David, he's in the wilderness. He's watching over the sheep and the lands of a wicked but extremely prosperous man named Nabal. Nabal was ridiculously rich. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and it was sheep shearing time in Carmel. And he has getting ready to have a feast. Now, this is what it says about Nabal. It said that he was a fool, but his wife was Abigail, and the woman was intelligent and good looking, just as much so as the man was mean and brutish. So what happens is David sends some of his guys in and asks, can we take part of your sheep shearing feast? We're out here in this wilderness. We've made sure no harm has come to you. Can our guys just come and be part of the feast? But Nabal's like, who is this son of Jesse? A bunch of slaves are running away from their masters. No way. He can't be part of this sheep shearing festival. And he insults David's character. He insults David's men. And David is so frustrated. They get back, and in verse 13 of 1 Samuel 25, it said, David said, strap on your swords. They all strapped on their swords. David and his men, they set out 400 of them. 200 stayed behind to guard the camp. Meanwhile, one of the young shepherds told Abigail, Nabal's wife, what had happened. David sent messengers from the backcountry to salute our masters, but he tore into them with insults. Yet these men treated us very well. They took nothing from us and didn't take advantage of us all the time we were in the fields. They formed a wall around us, protecting us day and night all the time we were out tending the sheep. Do something quickly, Abigail, because big trouble is ahead for our master and all of us. Nobody can talk to him. He is impossible, a real brute. Now, here's the situation. I was Abigail, I would be like, wow, you know what? Maybe I'll go over to one of the neighbors' farms for this night because I don't really like my husband. My husband's an idiot. He's insulted. He's brought this on his own head. But Abigail understood that the judgment wasn't going to just fall on her husband. It was going to fall on her household. Bible says that Abigail flew into action. She took 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 sheep dressed out, ready for cooking, a bushel of roasted grain, 100 raisin cakes, and 200 fig cakes. And she had it all loaded on some donkeys. Then she said to her young servant, go ahead and pave the way for me. I'm right behind you. But she said nothing to her husband, Nabal. Now, a lot of people might say, what? How dare she take all of this stuff from the feast knowing that Nabal did not want David to celebrate? Well, Abigail understood something that a lot of women don't understand. She had a portion to give. This wasn't just his household. This was also her household. And she was going to honor what was honorable, even if her husband behaved dishonorable. As she was riding her donkey descending into the ravine, David and his men were descending from the other end, so they met there on the road. David had just said that sure was a waste, guarding everything that man had out in the wild, so that nothing he had was lost, and now he rewards me with insults, a real slap in the face. May God do his worst to me if Nabal and every cur, which would mean men, in his misbegotten brood isn't dead meat by morning. As soon as Abigail saw David, she got off her donkey, fell on her knees at his feet, her face to the ground in homage, saying, "My master, let me take the blame. Let me speak to you. Listen to what I have to say." Another version says, "Let me whisper in your ear." She goes on to say, "Don't dwell on what that brute Nabal did. He acts out the meaning of his name. Nabal, fool. Foolishness oozes from him. I wasn't there when the young men my master sent arrived. I didn't see them. And now, my master, as God lives and as you live, God has kept you from this avenging murder. And may your enemies, all who seek my master's harm, end up like Nabal. Now take this gift that I, your servant girl, have brought to my master, and give it to the young men who follow in the steps of my master. Forgive my presumption, but God is at work in my master, developing a rule solid and dependable. My master fights God's battles. As long as you live, no evil will stick to you." What is she doing? First, she's using wisdom to position Nabal below David's notice. Second, she's using wisdom to reposition David's focus back on God. She's saying, hey, you don't want this blood on your hands. You don't want to act like Saul and be somebody that executes judgment on their own behalf. God is fighting on your behalf. Come on, David. This is what you need to remember. What are the promises of God on your life? You do not want this reproach on you. You do not want to take things in your own hand when God is getting ready to position you with his hand. Wise women know how to speak to men. She didn't shame him in front of his men. She didn't say, "Hey, you better stop this right now. You're going to destroy everything God's setting you up for." No, she whispered in his ear. She drew out the righteousness of David. Wise women know how to speak to the prince in a man. They know how to speak to the nobility in a man. And because Abigail used her words rightly, not only did David not avenge the insult, but her husband, when she went home and told him about it, said his heart turned to stone and he died. And it wasn't long before Abigail became one of David's wives. Now, I don't know about you. Would you rather be married to a fool, or would you rather speak to a prince? I believe you can be that woman who draws out the noble purposes of the men in her life, who draws out the noble purposes of the friends in her life. I need you to be that woman who understands what is in her charge, what is in her care, what she has to give, that you would open the door with generosity, and then you would speak with wisdom. Be that woman.